Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. What a beautiful morning. I wish that I could say that I ordered this weather especially for y'all, but it was Amanda's job this week, so you can thank her later. Thank you for being here this morning, for participating in the life of your community and lifting up what is commonly valued among us in worship. If today is your first visit to our community, I want to extend to you an especially warm welcome. You are our honored guest, and we're so glad that you're here. I'd like to invite you to take a moment to stop by the welcome table on your way out, or if you're watching online, please visit our website or our social media channels to learn more about our congregation and how you can get involved. Just a couple of announcements as we begin. First, this afternoon, our sanctuary team, who coordinated the massive volunteer effort that protected Vicky Chavez and her girls while they lived in our church, will be honored with this year's Gandhi Peace Award, presented by the Gandhi Alliance for Peace. The ceremony will take place at 3 o'clock at the amphitheater at the Tracy Aviary, and it will include a tree planting, a cultural presentation, and more. You are all invited to attend, and if you attend, you'll be invited into the aviary as guests as well. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I leaned over this pulpit during announcements and I asked, you know what this church needs? Anybody remember? It needs more fun. That's right. Our church needs more fun right now. Raise your hand if you want more fun at church. Now keep your hand up if you want to help make the fun. Yep. Keep them up. I hope every hand comes up because you have a unique opportunity to have more fun at church. You know what's fun? Little kids in costumes. That's what's fun, right? This year, we're going to have a trunk or treat at church, and we need adults to help. Do you have to be an adult with a little kid? No, because you know what the adults with little kids will be doing? Trying to squeeze their little kids into those funky outfits that have a million little Velcros and buttons and whatever. So we need adults that don't have kids to help us with the trunk or treat. If you are serious about having fun, and making fun happen for all ages at our church, please contact our religious education staff, maybe Amanda or Lissa, and let them know that you're a fun person and you want to help. And now, just one last one. Well, it's kind of two. First of all, if you have been waiting, especially if you're online, and you've been waiting to come to in-person church, until we have hearing devices, they're now available at the welcome table. You just check it out and then check it back in after worship. So if that's what's keeping you at home watching Zoom, I want you to know that they're here for you now. And we also continue to have the online Zoom chat after the service. You just stay right here on this very same Zoom link that you're on now, and we'll have a chat. And I just want to thank the volunteers who are making that happen every week for our online guests at worship. Also, thank you to our welcome table volunteers and our ushers this morning. We really appreciate what you do. Thank you. And now, let's begin our worship service. Our church is a home built of love, a home that every day you are building for each other. We begin our service by lighting the chalice, a flame that reminds us that when we are here, in body or in spirit, we are at home with each other. Today we light it with these words by Khalil Gibran. What is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching.
This week's worship is a bit tender for me at the moment. You see, I am in the process of selling my childhood home. My father, a widower, died in July, and I am currently working through the business of death. I am surrounded by the stuff of my family, the Christmas decorations, teddy bears, china and silver, the teapots that my great-grandfather brought back from his deployment to Japan during World War II, my mother's wooden holiday necklaces from the 80s, the things that made up my family's memories. I turn the corner and see our heights marked on the wall, the doorknob that smacked into my forehead when I was 3, requiring for me to get stitches because I was so excited to see my dad get home from work that I literally waited at the door. I see the notes my parents left each other, notes my dad left my sister, telling her what he packed her for lunch just the week before he died. I've been getting calls and texts and emails from people whose job it is, apparently, to scour probate court records for properties to purchase. Don't worry, they all say, just leave it. We'll sell it and package and throw away the contents of your family's life. They'll be happy to cut me a check. Home is all of these things, and none of these things, all at the same time. It's the dishes and garbage and scuffed walls. It's the last bag of frozen pierogies you find in the freezer, unsure of if you can eat them. Should there be fanfare? Or should they be eaten unceremoniously at my own kitchen table by my children, happily devouring their favorite food their grandfather lovingly made for them? Should I make my grandmother's stuffing this Thanksgiving? I found the recipe tucked in my mother's red and white checked cookbook, but my own family won't eat it. No one's calling or texting me with a simple answer to these questions. I'm reminded of a poem by Philip Larkin entitled, "Home is so sad." Home is so sad. It stays as it was left, shaped to the comfort of the last to go, as if to win them back. Instead, bereft of anyone to please, it withers so, having no heart to put aside the theft and turn again to what it started as, a joyous shot at how things ought to be. Long fallen wide, you can see how it was. Look at the pictures and the cutlery, the music and the piano stool, that vase. I am in a season of longing for all that was and all that will never be home again. The stuff of our lives so present, caught between the memories of my childhood and the family I have built on my own, unsure of how to reconcile the two in my heart. Maybe if I wait just a little bit longer, though, people will start texting me with the answer to that. May it be so.
Return to the home of your soul. Return again. Return again. Return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are. Born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return to the home of your soul. This church is the home of our souls, isn't it? Every week or 2 weeks, we're inviting a member of this congregation to come forward and talk about why it's important to them to give to our church. And today I'd like to invite Jessica French to come forward.
Good morning. This morning I'd like to share both why I give to any cause and why I give to First Church in particular. Why I give in general. First, it feels good. When I give, I feel gratitude and abundance. Second, I give because I often feel frustrated and powerless to affect the world as an individual. And giving helps me leverage and amplify my impact through organizations with longer reach, louder voices, and more clout. Third, I give because I feel a responsibility to pay my own way. And lest you mistake me for a saint, I give because I need to deliberately practice generosity, which doesn't come naturally. It's a way of fighting my own tendencies to greed and selfishness. Why I give specifically to First Church is because I receive so much from this church. Hope, a safe place to explore and grow spiritually, an opportunity to make music, a welcoming community to join in friendship, fellowship, and social justice work, sanctuary from the madness out there. I give to First Church because this church makes a huge difference in our community and even across the nation. My ability to contribute to social justice, environmental justice, immigration justice, and radical inclusion is multiplied through First Church. I give to First Church because it makes my heart swell. There are so many individuals whose lives have been completely changed by this church. Everyone knows the difference we've made for Vicky and her girls, but there are so many others. Another example, when the trans son of my kitchen designer died, First Church was there to give a loving religious memorial service to honor this young man's life and comfort his father when the Greek Orthodox Church to which he belonged would not. Our work to ease the lives of refugees arriving in our community with nothing but the clothes on their backs, our service to the homeless youth of Salt Lake City, our care for young students on the West Side, our efforts both in our own building and in our investments, and collectively to honor our beloved earth home. These are all efforts I want to support and can strengthen my influence by joining my financial contribution and my time and effort with all of yours. I want this church to be around as a spiritual home and community for you, for others who haven't yet discovered it, and as a force for good, for the earth and for the voiceless and invisible in our community. I give to First Church so I can hold hope for the future that our kids and grandkids and generations after that will inherit.
This past weekend, I was making dinner at home, and my spouse came into the kitchen and asked, "What you making?" I was making baked salmon with Caesar salad, quick and simple. But my mind was on something else entirely. I told him that I have been craving fried okra lately. It would just creep into my mind when I wasn't paying attention. Sliced okra, breaded in cornmeal, and deep fried, served with a splash of hot pepper vinegar. I actually have dreams about this food. That's how much I like it. Now, my spouse is not a fan of fried okra, so he made a face. But he said, "I really could go for some fried fish. Catfish." No, wait. Really what he wanted was to go to Prejean's restaurant in his hometown of Lafayette, Louisiana, and order one of everything. Fried catfish, alligator, crawfish etouffee with real Louisiana tails, not from China. Hush puppies. Hush puppies. Now, when he said hush puppies, my eyes and my mouth started to water. There is nothing in this world like a fresh, hot hush puppy. It's nothing but deep-fried cornmeal, but my God, it is the food of angels, maybe southern angels. I asked him, only half joking, if we could book a flight home just for the weekend, just eat everything in sight, and then come back home. Did you catch that? Fly home for the weekend, and then fly back home. Where is home? Home is here where I live, but home is also back home, the home in my heart. Home is fried okra and hush puppies, fresh crawfish and red tomatoes, juicy peaches, sweet tea. Home is hand-stitched quilts on cool nights and hand fans on hot summer days, fireflies in June and orb weaver spiders in October. Home is where my people are buried, in Sale Creek Cemetery in northwest Alabama. Home is complicated for me. Home is the home of the civil rights movement. The streets of my home are the streets where people marched, singing the songs of freedom, while hoses slammed them with high-powered water and dogs tore at their flesh. Home is where you might buy a bag of hot-boiled peanuts off the tailgate of a truck that hides a Confederate flag sticker on the bumper that you only notice when you're pulling back out into traffic. Home is where you give people directions by landmarks rather than street numbers, but a good neighbor steers a black or queer friend around the neighborhood where they'll be watched from the porch swings. I love my home, and I tend to be fierce about defending it. frustrates me no end to hear folks from other places paint the South with the brush of a single color. The South is occupied territory, with a rich white minority leveraging fear of the other to control land that they stole generations ago and worked with stolen labor. But it is the only home that I have. Stolen, and I have no right to it, no legitimate claim, yet my people are from there going back 3 centuries. Where else could I call my home? Where is the place that you call home? Is it here in this valley, the place of which they said, this is the place? This dusty valley turned Garden of Eden by people who believed they were sent here by God, people who believed this so strongly that they walked on foot hundreds of miles, carrying what little they had between them to get here. Is this your homeland but further back, before the settlers, before the army, when this land had never seen white people? There is pain in both answers, and yet, where else can you call your home? Home is carried in our bodies, in the memories of our bodies, the foods that you ate as a child, the ones your ancestors gave to you, the feel of the dirt of that place in your hands, whether red clay or desert dust or white beach sand or rich black topsoil in a field of grain. The sounds of your life, the birds and insects chirping in the background, maybe the honks of horns and sirens, or the sounds of the wind blowing across a prairie. We know home in our bones, and that is why when we move elsewhere, no matter how at home we are made to feel, we always retain that code written on us that occasionally wakes up and says, "Come home." Many of us grew sick of being at home in the past 2 years, working at home, confined to our home, stuck at home as we took steps to avoid COVID. Sometimes we tried to make the best of it, making our nests as comfortable and easy to live in as we could. Yet we longed for elsewhere, the places we couldn't go. There were times I wished just to be in my office, hearing the sounds of the nursery school kids in the hallway, or saying hi to an occasional visitor, or sitting in an ordinary table in an ordinary restaurant, eating nothing special, but eating it somewhere besides my house, the 4 walls that I'd seen too much of. But there was a deeper longing too. I heard people talking about where they were going to go when they could break free of their isolation. I heard people saying, "I'm going to go see my grandchildren, my kids, my parents," especially the parents who were aging or ailing. I remember scrolling through social media and seeing people hugging their family members for the first time in a year or longer. People who were venturing forth from their homes to find shelter in the home of each other. Meanwhile, more and more people lost their homes during the pandemic, found themselves homeless, couch surfing, staying with friends until they could get their feet underneath them. Meanwhile, millions of elderly Americans wondered if they would be able to leave their homes again before the end of their lives, while millions more with immune and other diseases feared even the mail carrier and the delivery driver, never mind having visitors or getting out. Meanwhile, 26 million refugees continue to flow in streams around our world from Haiti and Afghanistan, but also Central America, Central Africa, Venezuela, and many more. It reminds us that home is more than where we hang our hats. Home transcends walls, streets, neighborhoods, even national borders. Home is the people who hold us. Even when we find ourselves adrift and rootless, the knowledge that we can always go back home, wherever that may be, even if it isn't a place, can be enough to get us through the hardest times. In the Plum Village Buddhist monastery in Bordeaux, France, the disciples of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh are called to meditation by inviting a bell and using this simple verse: listen, listen. This wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. Listen, listen. This wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. Whenever I hear this phrase, I feel a deep sense of comfort. The teacher is calling me back to my true home. Where is my true home? He's not talking about the place where I live, nor the place where my memories call from. What does this mean? My true home. Thich Nhat Hanh, known to his students as Te, or teacher, says, "Your true home is in the here and now. It is not limited by time, space, nationality, or race. Your true home is not an abstract idea. It is something you can touch and live in every moment." That's an astonishing definition of home from a man who was exiled from his home for almost 40 years. As a lecturer at a Buddhist university in Vietnam in the 1960s, he supported student relief efforts in his home country while traveling abroad to teach and rally for peace. In 1975, while Nhat Hanh was in France chairing the Vietnamese Buddhist peace delegation, the North Vietnamese government took control of the army in the south and forbade the monk from returning to his homeland. He remained in France and began to build the largest monastic organization in the West, giving the Western world the gift of engaged Buddhism, which encourages Buddhists not to disconnect from the world, but rather to use Buddhist principles as a force for social change. We know from his writings that Nhat Hanh missed his home in Vietnam and wanted for many years to return. Yet he and his teachings, the teachings of the Buddha, became home for millions of seekers over the decades to come. Through him, these seekers have been able to rest in the three jewels of Buddhism and have come to know, as he does, where home really is. He writes, "During so many lifetimes, I have been a wanderer seeking for peace and happiness. On my path of seeking, I have fallen into the abyss of mistakes, bitterness, and despair. There were so many times that I thought I would die before I find what I am seeking. Our wonderful existence includes both happiness and suffering. How can happiness be possible without suffering? When we are able to see that suffering is the element that can be used to make happiness, we suddenly stop suffering. With this understanding, my happiness becomes immense and is able to embrace all the suffering. I'm no longer a wanderer because I have a path and I don't have to worry anymore. My path is the path of stopping, the path of enjoying the present moment. It is a path where every step brings me back to my true home. It is a path that leads nowhere. I'm on my way home. I arrive at every step. Now, 95 years of age, this week, Tay has returned to Vietnam, to the monastery where he was first ordained. He is near death, yet lives as fully in each breath now as he ever did in life, because he is at home. At home in Vietnam, at home in his root monastery, at home in himself and in his practice. He has lived most of his life away from Vietnam, yet he has never been away from home. And neither have we. No matter how far from home you might feel, you have actually never left your home. No matter how deep is your longing for home, you are always there. You are at home right now. I invite you to close your eyes once more as we invite the bell and say to yourself, I am home. Listen, listen. This wonderful sound brings us back to our true home.
Grieve not your heart for want of place, nor yearn for easy praise, but fit yourself some task to do, and well employ your days. From wise and foolish both alike, we should all try to learn, for one can show us how to live, the other what to spurn. But this above all else obey, it is the best of goals. What you would wish not done to you, do not to other souls.
Our gratitude today to Nikki Blackburn for singing our hymns. Thank you. We send our love today to Tay, that his passage may be smooth when the time comes. We send our love to those watching our worship service from their homes, for whatever reason, be they sick, cautious, traveling, or checking us out for the first time. We send our love to every person who is far from home, to every person who cannot be home, to every person who feels they have no home to return to. And we reserve love for ourselves, that we may find ourselves at home in every breath, wherever we go. Amen.
The Postlude is a choral piece that those of you who maybe have been around for a long, long time remember the choir doing some time ago called Homing. It's written in the early 20s, and the poetry accompanying it is a little bit dated, but quite lovely. The piece is called Homing, and I would like to read you the poem first, and then I'll play it. When Monica said that she was going to do this service, this is the first piece that came to mind. Homing, Arthur Salmon wrote the words. All things come home at eventide, like birds that weary of their roaming, and I would hasten to thy side, homing. O dearest, I have wandered far, from daybreak to the twilight gloaming. I come back with the evening star, homing. Thou art my hunger and my need, the goal and solace of my roaming. Be thou the haven when I speed, homing. All things come home at eventide.
Thank you for coming, everyone.